PowerPoint for today. Thank you.
There's
See
the
that
message.
started. I will share the PowerPoint for today, and Barb, if you can take it from
Sure.
here,
All right.
get us started.
Yep. Good afternoon. I'm calling this meeting of the Governance Working Group to order. It is 1:03 on August 20th, 2025. I'm Barbara Neal. We will be recording the meeting, and the recording will be posted to the task force webpage following the meeting. Let's start with our usual roll call of working group members. If you could verbally acknowledge your presence when I call your name. Paul White.
I'm here.
Hello. And Mike Dungis.
I am here.
All right, excellent. And of course, we have our project management team from Televate, Rick, Dom, and Elizabeth.
Everybody.
Thank you. And looks like no members of the public or any other stakeholders right now. So we'll move on to approval of the agenda, which is up on the screen there. Any changes to the agenda, Paul or Mike?
Not for me.
No.
No, I don't have any either, so we'll consider it approved, and we'll move on to approval of the minutes. These would be the minutes from the August 14th meeting, which were distributed to the working group members following that meeting and are available on the webpage. Is there a...
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
Thank you.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Paul. All in favor, or any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes from August 14th, raise your hand or indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Hands are up and the ayes are in and the minutes are approved. And I will hand it back to you now, Dom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, very efficiently done. And as Barb mentioned, we are the governance working group. You can see one of the 7 working groups, and a quick update on the schedule. We have 3 ongoing working groups. In addition to the governance, we have tier 2 and tier 3. This is a somewhat of a tentative schedule. It's not been approved by the task force. Those items in yellow are recommended changes so that we can maintain consistency in terms of the working groups. We are trying to get ready in both tier 2 and tier 3 actually to provide recommendations and report to the task force at next week's meeting. Right now, the governance working group is shown to wrap up by the end of August as well. I don't believe we'll be ready to report out to the task force next week. So I would propose a couple more weeks on this working group as well. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I agree. We're not going to be ready next to report. Give a final report next week.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Agreed.
So I'll update that as well. And as we mentioned, start off with reiterating the goal here. The goal of this working group is to develop preliminary priorities and recommendations for a governance structure to administer the regional and statewide interoperability communications policies, standards, procedures for public safety dispatch operations as covered by the task force charter. We have a number of action items to update on, and again, sorry, this is a little small, so let me go into presentation mode here, make it a little easier. Some of the ones that have been closed out have been hidden, so we focus just on those immediate ones. Action item 2 was on the governance structure. Televate did provide some suggestions in terms of a definition and structure. I know Barb had a question about that and wanted to give some more thoughts, so we'll review those slides today, and we can update that as necessary if we desire. So I'll leave that open for now. Number 6 was Mike to work with the League of Nations, League of Cities and Towns. That's right. And
You're showing your age.
determine their
Tom.
intention for participation. So Mike, I think you said last time you expect that they'll want to provide feedback at the end rather than ongoing during the meetings. And I think you were going to confirm that at the next board meeting.
Which is still upcoming. Yep. So that's correct, Dominic. No,
Okay.
no. So nothing different on that for me from the last meeting.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Number 7, I believe we can close that out as Barb provided some information yesterday, but I left it on here. I thought, Barb, you might want to give an overview of what you found out for the rest of the working group.
Yes, definitely. So I had initially made contact with Senator Hardy about the status of the county government discussion at the legislature. She got me in touch with Senator Brian Collmore, who's now the chair of Senate GovOps. And I had a nice conversation with him the other day. So he filled me in on the status of the county government committee. The Senate apparently has appointed all the individuals that need to be on that committee from that side of the legislature. They are waiting, however, because there are 2 House members that have yet to be appointed by the Speaker. He expects that will happen. I'm not quite sure I was entirely clear on the timing, but either when the session opens, and I think he said perhaps before, but at any rate, I'll keep an eye on that committee on the legislative webpage and make sure that we're all just aware of where those conversations stand. So they have not met, though, for quite a long while. So I suspect the conversation might be pretty preliminary at first. That's my assumption, not anything he told me. I also asked Senator Collmore about what he sees as the overall sentiment regarding the task force's work to date. He acknowledged not knowing exactly whether any recommendations had been sent over already or not, or had already been sent over. So anyway, I filled him in on our recent request for additional spending authority and the in-depth work that the working groups are doing right now. I told him that our goal is to come up with recommendations for paths forward in the various categories that we're looking at in preparation for next session. So, and I let him know I'd give him a heads up as we're approaching, January with where things stand and what his committee might expect to hear from us on. And that's just that's where we left it for now.
All right, thanks, Barb. Any questions for Barb before we move on?
I have a question. Barb, is that senator that you just mentioned, is he now and his committee now the direct committee that the task force is working under, or is that still in flux?
I would have to look back at the legislation, but I think the task force was to report back to Senate GovOps and House GovOps. And maybe other committees. I would have to look at the legislation again.
I'll look at it.
Okay.
I want to know, I just want to know what influence we need to have with him, and if who you're going to coordinate with when we make these presentations, and how to do it and what they want to see from us. I guess that's got to be something. I'm talking about in general for the task force, not for just governance.
Okay. Yep. Sure enough. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to want to be working with him, and he seemed to be looking forward to hearing what we had to say. So, yeah, let's check the legislation and make sure we're not missing anyone. But he's going to be a good start.
That committee is the most relevant for us to be in communication with. And I know the previous working group that preceded this task force, that was the committee that always wanted to hear from us and what we were up to.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Action item number 8 was for Mike to identify contact from the Regional Planning Commission. that we could talk with to determine their potential for using those agencies as with some type of interface into the governance structure.
Yeah, so I was able to reach out to the executive director. He gave me somebody to be in touch with about it. They were on vacation until Tuesday. What's today? Wednesday. So they're back today. So I'll make that connection today. But I just didn't want to get out ahead of it too far. In other words, I got busy and forgot. But no, I did talk to them, and I'll get
All right, great.
in touch with Ethan. So
Thank you. And we'll continue to work that. And action item number 9, I think we'll continue to work that as well. I know Rick and Chris have been trying to set up a time to get Chris's input directly. And I don't think that's been set yet, correct, Rick?
No, well, you saw an email exchange between us yesterday and today. Yeah, we're trying to do it this week, and I'll get back to him a little later today with that schedule. If we're not able to get together before Friday, we'll get together early next week. But we're trying to get together this week.
Okay, thank you. And that completes the review of the action items with some additional information that we provided last time were action item number 2, which I wanted to revisit. This again was information from specifically referred to as the governance landscape that came from SAFECOM. And then in particular, I want to discuss the definition. So this definition here, public safety communications governance, refers to the policies, procedures, and structures that guide the planning, implementation, and operation of communication systems used by emergency responders and other public safety agencies. I think, Barb, you had some reservations with this initially. Do you have another suggestion, or have you given any more thought to that position?
I actually went back and listened to my own conversation from the earlier meeting, and I think I was just picking it apart too much. I mean, I think this is general enough to for people to understand that what we're talking about here. So I'm fine, and we can go with this one if everybody else agrees.
works for me too.
Mike, Paul, how about you?
I don't have anything to pick apart about this. I continue to struggle with, and not just with this working group, but with the task force as a whole. I just keep struggling with the whole, what is the cart versus what is the horse? If we ultimately end up, when I say we, I mean the state of Vermont, if we ultimately go with Mission Critical's recommendation that we end up with 6 state-owned, state-run communication centers, then yes, I mean, we need something that is essentially, we need to be codified as state statute, like the CVPSA's document was. But if we don't end up going that route, if we end up with something that's sort of autonomous, like we currently have, run by a sheriff's department or run by a county government or run by a municipality, then I don't know what authority we as a task force would have to impose on them a governance structure, unless it's legislatively mandated. But I don't have anything to dissect with this that's on the screen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm thinking this definition could work whether it's something that is created or if it's like a recommendation for whatever the governance entity might be in the end run, or entities might be, that at least this is what we're talking about when we say governance. So.
All right, great, thanks. And also I note on the right side of the screen are key charter elements, which at least in my opinion, we may want to include them as part of our recommendation in terms of the governance structure as well, that the charter should include these items, should address these items once that's developed. Also, we discussed at the last meeting, we went through a review of some sample governance structures, and these are the same this is the same information we discussed. We have it in here in case anyone wants further discussion or further information on this. This was information from Minnesota and shows their structure, as well as some information from North Dakota, shows their breakdown in regions. And then we also reviewed the ECAC information, and I think finally the now defunct CV PSA information. Any need to review any of that further, or should we move on to our next work?
I just want to say, I did take a closer look at Minnesota and North Dakota in particular, and, you know, to get a little bit better handle on what it was they're doing. And
Right.
I really liked, and maybe this goes to the next part of our conversation about what we consider important. I really liked the Minnesota attitude, if you will. I think it's in some of their documentation about having a bottom-up approach where the systems are built with the input of local responders. It made me think of the addressing in Vermont. So that all the GIS data in Vermont is built from the bottom up rather than the state or the, you know, on high down. And it's worked really, really well for us and gotten us like extremely good GIS data for 911. So anyway, I took note of that. It did also
Right.
feel a little bit overwhelming to me, like with the number of subcommittees that we're looking at here. And I'm thinking, I don't even know if there's that many people in Vermont, you know? So,
Let alone
or-
that many people that are willing to serve on a subcommittee.
right,
Right.
right. So
Yeah,
it
I
did
think-
seem a little
Yeah, you brought that
overwhelming,
up.
but yeah.
Yeah, Paul brought that up earlier. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
true. So it might be a
Well, if
little
you
bit too
recall-
complex.
If you recall, I did bring up the number of counties and the number of population and yeah, I think this is overwhelming for us, but I think structure wise, you know, there's some good concepts here that we could, you know, borrow from.
Yes. So
Right.
one question I have on this is, under which subcommittee or working group do we find things like the dispatch function, not the LMR and not the network stuff, not the technology stuff, but the dispatch function? So who says what on the radio and how, and CAD systems and that type of thing. Is that lumped in with 911? Or is it
Yes,
separate?
I'm pretty sure it is, but I can get
Okay.
you a better answer on that. But I
Okay.
think that's where it's lumped in. And
Okay.
and
Okay.
I don't think it'd be wise to lump it in there. My opinion. I think that, you know, maybe, you know, obviously you already have those responsibilities at the Enhanced 911 Board, but yeah,
I think
I'll ask a question or two.
okay. Yeah. I think right now it might be good to keep them separate, but there is some logic in bringing those conversations together.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Thanks.
I do note that in the models presented by MCP, the three options that we'll get to, they do have an operations subcommittee.
Okay. Okay.
So I would guess that would address what you're talking about, Barb.
Okay. Great.
All right. Anything else on any of these previous examples?
Not from me.
Okay.
So
and we
can I share something on the
Which
that
one?
on the one before this, the slide before this one, on the council.
Yeah.
So in recent conversations, it was brought up that the Emergency Communication Advisory Council was put in as a temporary replacement or structured against what we would call the the Statewide
SIEC.
Interoperability Executive, the
Right,
SIEC.
the SIEC, yeah.
So the SIEC is pretty common public safety communications governance structure that was recommended by Department of Homeland Security as a result of some work that division did with the state in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and so basically that SIEC is really and the ones particularly in North Dakota, that certainly the SIEC still is the oversight. That is the executive body. Here, this is executive order creating this council, but this council had a specific, purpose for broadband. And while we did discuss this, that some of these languages, are NPSBN and on emergency communications, she'll advise the governor on issues. It does stretch into that area, but I don't know. I kind of have my concerns about this council being an SIEC. So anyway, I thought that was interesting what that person that shared that information with us said about this. Either way, I mean, this council is not functioning right now. It had a purpose, but it's not functional. So
Right. It's interesting because I'm on this council and you're right that it's not active. It has not been active since the whole FirstNet question was resolved. My impression of it was added kind of as a placeholder for future work, perhaps. I've never heard reference to the SIEC in conversations about this council, but I don't spend a lot of time talking about it either. So,
yeah.
So that may be somebody's impression, but I don't remember that specific thing being part of the reasoning for creating it. I guess I can't fill that in with any other reason.
Right.
I
brought it
don't
up
know.
because I didn't see the relationship either, but it doesn't matter what it was, what it isn't, and what it's not doing. It matters what we do going forward. And so I think, the lesson learned here is you can create a governance, but if you aren't administering it, and it's not actively involved with, and has a specific agenda, has a specific direction, has funding to support it, has some power to request money and spend it wisely. I don't see where it's going to be successful. So our governance model has to be sanctioned, in my opinion, be sanctioned and have some budgetary authorities.
Rick, are you looking at this as, hey, we could restructure this and use it? Or are you looking at this as, hey, this is an example of what we don't want to do and we need to build something completely different? Like just from your perspective.
I think it's both, Mike. I think it has both elements there. I think I like the council composition. As I mentioned, I think that the right member, that membership feels good. I haven't studied it, but I know it does not represent the new dispatcher association, so they would likely, I would recommend that they be included in it. But this is pretty similar to what an SIEC would have on it, and but I think that, and of course this is the working group's position. If the working group is going to recommend a governance board, executive board, then it would seem prudent that we would recommend state the types of representation that should be there, and this provides us a good working model to reference back to.
Right.
Okay.
Thank
you for the clarification.
I don't disagree with that. As I'm reading through the council composition, just an observation, it does seem heavy on the Department of Public Safety. So we would have the commissioner, the director of VEM, which is part of public safety, the SWIC, which is Corey. So also Department of Public Safety, the Colonel of the State Police, obviously also Public Safety, and then so on with the rest of the representation. So that we might want to look at that as well. Maybe all those people are necessary, but it does seem DPS heavy to me.
Yeah. Don, can you go back to the slide before this one? Right. So here is the North Dakota Statewide Interoperability Executive Committee, and their membership, and it isn't as I mean, it isn't as heavy on the Department of Public Safety. I mean, so yes, you have to be careful that you don't overload it in one discipline or another. So I mean, there are Fire Chiefs Association. And then there's also the Sheriffs and Deputies Association, Police Officers Association, Police Chiefs Association, Highway Patrol, and so yeah, I mean it's very law enforcement heavy there also. But I hear where you're coming from, and I think that's certainly this working group's option to recommend a board and why you're recommending it.
Right. If you go back to the ECAC slide, Dom, wherever that went. Yeah. So, I was focusing on heavy on Department of Public Safety, but I do agree with, but one could also make the argument it's heavy on state in
government.
general.
A lot of governor appointees.
Yep. Interesting. So, all right. Well, just an observation.
It's interesting too, though, the last bullet there under council composition: in appointing council members, consideration shall be given the different geographical regions of the state and the need for balance between rural and urban areas.
Yes.
I mean, it should be a balance between local government and state government, or but it says it, but I don't know if it's really fully represented in the membership.
That's interesting. And that same language is in the 911 board enabling legislation about geographic regions and rural and urban. But that's good. I'm not sure it is reflected in the membership.
No, it's not. That's why I put that in there, because when I put this together, I'm like, I like that statement, but I did not see it reflected in the membership.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Ready
you.
to move on? Thank you.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I think one observation that was made addresses this, and this is kind of the intro into the three options that are provided by MCP. So I think somebody mentioned that the preference here is to have the governance created by statute, so to have a formal governance structure established by statute with direct legislative committee oversight. Is that accurate?
I go back to my previous quandary of, if we end up with the structure proposed by MCP with 6 state-owned, state-run dispatch centers, then yes.
Right.
Okay.
But if we end up with some kind of a county thing or a regional thing that's not run by state government, then I'm not so sure.
Okay. All right.
The other piece that I'd
Well-
comment on is the direct legislative committee's oversight. And I mean this in a way that, one, I don't know that legislative committees.
They don't do that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I think we would want to clean that up a little bit
Okay.
I think a good example, and Barbara, maybe you see things differently because you work at the state, but I think a good example is the way that BGS works. When most of the time they operate as a department, they have their own leadership, and then if they need to go outside of the bounds of their prescribed guidelines from the legislature, they have to go back to committee or they take it to, and then they get it changed or approved in that case. And the only reason I know this is because I'm working with them on something. So I don't know, maybe that's a different perspective, but like if we can set up our governance such that the only time it has to go to a legislative committee is if we need to change said governance, then that would probably be the right connection at that level, just from what I've seen. I'm willing to discuss from there.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think I mean, it needs to be created by the legislature and authorized and empowered by the legislature, but I don't think we want it to be directly supervised by a part-time legislature that, what if something happens in September? I mean,
Right.
who do you go to? Do you go to joint fiscal? Who do you go to for that oversight?
All right.
Right.
And I think that all makes sense. One of the things I think, Barb, you had pointed out earlier was one issue, at least you felt with the ECAC, was that it was established by executive order, so it was only advisory and didn't have, authority that would potentially be necessary.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I think all of these things are good to keep in mind, but even the statute one, right? Even if it wasn't a state entity that ran the show, there could still be a recommendation that the formal governance structure at whatever level be established by whatever the body is, right, at that level. So would it be like the select board or something if we're talking town or anyway, I don't know how that works, but
I think there would be certain minimum standards set in statute, and then you could always go beyond that depending on the complexity of
right.
what you build.
Right.
Okay. I think
Can,
we could maybe all agree that ad hoc is not an effective way to govern.
No,
Would
it's
we
not.
agree? Okay.
I think we can agree. No, it's not an effective way to govern.
So I don't know if that helps you, Dom, advance the conversation.
It does. Yeah.
I have just to play devil's advocate here. So we've got a statute, legislative, created for governance and for what we're all pursuing. And without a committee, without an oversight committee, who do we go to get approval for for initiatives and some funding for them? I mean, how would that be done without having a committee? It has to be directly always to the entire legislative group, or if you don't have a committee that you speak with and have involvement in, or even as a membership on the governance committee, then who do we get to support some of our current and future initiatives?
Right. That's a good question.
Yeah, I think whatever we build, even if the state doesn't actually own it and run it, there needs to be some executive branch oversight. There has to be some entity that, like the 911 board or some future agency yet to be, like the Criminal Justice Council or something, yes, it's run by a local board, decisions made by a local board, but ultimately answers to some executive branch entity that ultimately makes decisions and authorizes funding.
Yep.
How is it done at the 911 board? Is there interaction at that level between your board and legislature, Barb?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So we report to, if you will. Well, it varies sometimes. The legislature can sometimes change who your committee of jurisdiction is. We've been involved with Senate GovOps lately. Senate Finance handles telecommunications, and so we have lots of interaction with them as well. And on the House side, it's been House. They just changed the name. It used to be House Energy and Technology. I don't know. It's House Energy.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact name. But we were plunked under them.
But yet you
because
are
we-
an executive branch entity, though, right?
Yes. Well, yeah, we're an independent board, reports to the governor, essentially. The board
Right.
chair is appointed by the governor. So,
So you have
Did
two
that-
masters.
yeah.
So the reason I asked the question is that the E91 board is a successful structure. And I haven't, I haven't heard any concerns, Barb. I mean, obviously there's always probably room for improvement, but if we have if that governance model, that structure, not saying the membership or whatever, but that structure and who the reports to at the legislative or oversight, then, it may make sense to borrow from the best of what you have and try to, sweep under the carpet what isn't the best. But I think going back to the legislature with this model, we're recommending this model because of the success we've had here, and to try, they're going to make final decisions, but if we give them a roadmap, that will simplify their decision making as well.
Yes. Yeah, it would be helpful to have a clearly defined legislative committee that is, our go-to, so to speak. And for the 911 board, it has changed over the years. We've navigated through those changes, of course, but for consistency's sake, it might be helpful to have a little more structure around that.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
good. I think I'm hearing some of what we said we wanted to put together previously. So for right now, unless there's some objection, I'll skip over the three models that were presented by MCP. And we had talked about developing some key attributes for the governance model that we want to propose. So I think I just heard some being discussed. There are a couple here that I think we heard on previous discussions. So this is kind of, I guess, our working task here right now. I'll take this out of presentation mode so I can make some changes or additions. But I guess what I'd like to do here is, are there things we can record here of attributes that we want to have in a structure that we recommend? I think we talked about previously having decision-making authority. So does that mean it has to be established by statute? And the concern previously discussed was about having some type of oversight, the good and the bad of that, I guess. Is there something we want to capture there?
Well, right now I'm going back to what Paul's brought up a couple times of the decision-making authority, and where that's established depends, right, on if we have this statewide oversight entity or if we go with a more regional
Okay.
approach.
So even if we go with a regional approach, is there still the ability for a statewide oversight entity in our governance structure? Right? Is that something that could be consistent in either direction?
Similar to, even though our 911 PSAPs, the majority of them are locally owned, locally run, they still
Right.
ultimately report to Barb's board.
To you,
Right.
right?
Yeah, that's true on certain things. And we establish the technical and operational standards under which they have to do their thing.
Right.
For 911. So,
Right.
Because I think it would be difficult to get any kind of consistency across the state if every single entity or even every single region was able to come up or was required to come up with its own technical and operational standards, right? There's lots of ways you could go there. I mean, there are established national standards, which is the direction I would take people in, but who knows where people would go, right?
And I
So-
think you're hitting the nail on the head, Barbara. I think the idea that even if, because I understand the conundrum, like I actually love the idea of the state setting up regional dispatch centers and running. I think it's smart. I think it's simple. I think it's clean. I know it's not going to happen. So
Because it's smart. Simple,
because
and
it's smart, simple, and clean. So, but that doesn't mean that, because this is real, and it's funny because it really is this is our job now, right? Is to say, we believe that in order for this to function, no matter what format, the technical and operational standards need to come from one place, and then everybody can operate within that. So I do think that that is a critical piece of the governance, is that there would be a top level board, even though there may be regional boards, or a top level organizational structure, and there will have to be a paid set of people that operate that day to day and can be the reference point for those regional dispatch centers in question of conflict or need of change or whatever. They're the ones they go to. So I think that's going to have to be established. I don't see any way around that.
You know, and that's part of I'm pretty sure it was the Minnesota model, where they talk about the state level establishing certain minimum requirements for things, and the regionals could be more restrictive in their
Right.
approach to their operations, but they couldn't be less.
That's right.
So, all right, so yeah, minimum standards.
Is that captured well, Mike? Is there something else that need to be captured here?
Yeah, I think it's
What are your
important
thoughts?
to say technical and operational, like the way Barbara was saying it. I think, it's not, because there may be some things like shift schedules that we aren't going to care about, right? Like if,
Right.
like that may be very much a regional management thing. So I think it's
Right.
important to say technical and operational.
Yeah, I mean, that could include, the recommended minimum staffing
Right,
requirements.
there you go.
Which could be
Right.
recommendations, or they could be requirements.
That's brilliant, because you could
So,
go either way. Sorry to interrupt.
Right.
right, no, exactly. But as long as certain performance measures are being met, staff it however you want, you know? And I would include like your training requirements and your the training and certification requirements, that type of stuff.
Training and what? I'm sorry.
Certification.
Certification, yep.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind that those things cost money, and we can't be requiring, we would need, this top level board would need to support that funding wise.
Right.
By providing the training, providing the whatever, anyway, that's, all these things cost money.
Mm-hmm. Do we all agree we certainly need regional representation? I think Paul made the point at in one meeting that like some of the models here where they have a regional, for instance, like this one has a regional governance body, but then all of these subcommittees are replicated under each region. That's probably not something we're going to do within Vermont due to the just the
Size.
size and population. Right?
Yeah. When you're asking this question, Dominic, I think about how the state's attorneys operate, right? So I'm trying to find Vermont examples that resonate. The state's attorneys govern themselves. So if you think of those as executive directors, so let's say you have six dispatch centers and you have 6 executive directors, they would all meet together as part of this board to help establish the standards. Now, that has a lot of great positives to it. It has a ton. But if you talk to any state's attorney, the number one negative they see is the budget side. And they always are fighting over who gets what of the budget. And they actually have to agree. All 12 of them have to agree who's getting what of the overall budget. So I think that while that process of saying, hey, maybe when we establish this high level, so there's an executive director, so it's 7, right? And the 7 executive directors need to establish these standards and get them approved or whatever. And this is just a suggestion that the financial side, it needs to have a separate process so that they don't have to fight for themselves, that rather it's looked at in an objective fashion.
So
I
is-
think what you
is
said,
that
Mike, is also
captured?
represented.
Well-
It's also represented as having finance committees, you know?
So here,
Right.
this shows kind of the structure, at least I was thinking, where you have the E911 board, remain intact. There is a finance structure or a finance committee, I guess this would be. Is that what you're thinking, Mike, or at a different level?
Yeah, I mean, yes, again, so again, being such that, if the statewide governance body ends up being made up of the executive directors of the regional bodies, right? I don't know how we want to do it. I do think that having a way of a concentric, like a way that the people who are managing the regions can have a voice at the statewide level. We're thinking of setting, once we set this up, right? Once this is up and running, it's that operation after the fact, right? So that voice is going to be critically important that they have that. So if they are making up that main governance body from not from an administrative standpoint, but from their administrative leaders being the board, so to speak, having them have to fight over, you could keep every one of these, but finance might need to be pulled out, and that may need to be directed somewhere else. You might need to have a third party on that. Again, I'm not trying to add complexity here. I'm just saying, look out for that pitfall if that's the approach we take. That's all.
And any other thoughts? The other bullet that was put in here, I'm sure we discussed it earlier, but I think at least initially, the thought was to leave the E911 board intact as is, as opposed to incorporating it into a model such as this. Right? I think that was the consensus.
Well, that's certainly my opinion,
Right.
because it works, and we don't want to introduce
Right.
risk where it's not necessary.
Right, agreed.
But I think the conversation could evolve over time as whatever governance comes out of this work is actually implemented and kind of matures, right? And knows what it's doing, so to speak. There could be more conversation around that. And hopefully I'll be retired.
Well, it's funny you say that, Barb, because I've keep thinking the answer to this is to just change the name of the E911 board, double the staff, and move all of this under your supervision, or
or
takes
after
your
I
place when you
retire, right?
Right.
Well, there's some logic to that too, especially if you want to keep it independent, right? Because this is already an independent, I put that in quotes, but state board.
But we keep mirroring the structure of the E911 board.
Right. And so maybe it does come together
in the future
somehow. And that's, these discussions haven't happened recently at the board. So just know that anything that I'm saying is
right.
Speaking for me, not for the board. I don't know the position they would have.
Is that a key attribute, to be an independent state entity? Is that something we want to include?
I like that idea. I don't know how others feel. It has worked well for the 911 system.
And I think it would help with getting buy-in from the local agencies.
Right.
If, as opposed to saying the state of Vermont's going to run this and they're going to run it the way that ultimately the governor or the governor's designee sees fit. If it was an independent autonomous board, I think it will get more buy-in from the locals.
Yeah.
Mike, do you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay. What else do we need to include here? There's got to be more.
Well, you have to have some funding, administrative funding. One of the things that that, let's just take the VCOM experience. And I brought this up because, you know, what we learned about VCOM was that there was a significant investment made in VCOM. Over $7.5 million. And there was good intentions behind it. Although some might question that, but let's just say there was good intentions behind it. But there wasn't a governing board. There wasn't, it was never set up. There was nobody funding it. There wasn't regular meetings on it, to improve it, to enhance it, to learn how it's being done. But if you don't have administrative funding, no one is going to show up to dance.
Right. And when you say administrative funding, you also mean the actual people power to get things done. So
yes,
funding for administration and the human resources that you would need, like full-time employees, to get this thing moving, in addition to whatever the authoritative board is. You have to have the worker bees to do the work, right? So like in our case, the board staff. So
yes, this is the, when I say administrative, I'm talking about those people in particular.
okay.
What funding the board is able to convince the legislature to provide, or members of the community to provide, that's the work of the board, the executive board. But without this administrative support, it's just not going to happen. You're
right.
Like you said, you got to take, I think you mentioned it earlier, how are we going to get, we don't even have this much money, this many people to be on these subcommittees. So,
right.
But if we don't have someone arranging the sessions and putting the minutes and doing liaison work and it's not gonna happen.
Right. I mean, it's our task force and its predecessor are perfect examples that, the legislature was well intentioned by being all inclusive. They included a fire chief and a police chief and a paramedic and a mayor and a select board member and all these different people, but none of us are experts at this stuff. Without Televate, we would still be spinning our wheels, not knowing where to go and what to do. So that administrative support is key.
Yeah, we need that subject matter experts, whether they're consultants, like the situation we're in now with the task force, or they're vetted staff that are subject matter experts, which you would need. I could see it transitioning from one to the other actually over time, because so.
And I think, Rick, you said there was no board for VCOM. I think that there was a board, but they didn't have the administrative staff.
Yes, that I should have rephrased it that way. Right. You're absolutely right. What happens? Let's just be honest. You folks have been over a year and a half. You've been showing up to do this work, and you're also, you have other full-time responsibilities. So that's still going to be how it goes forward. But without having some dedicated people to facilitate that, it's you're not going to be able to make time. You're not going to know. Right. No one's going to be establishing it. The agendas, all of this work is because it's public hearing, and you got to have an Emily at all times, and you have to have others. So yeah.
If you go back to slide 19 or 20, I don't remember which one it is. If you look at maybe it's
this one.
No, the next one down. Maybe it's 20. So in that section, in that statewide governance body piece, like, to me, that's where you're gonna, and I understand we're saying governance body, but that's going to be the administrative group, right? And it has to have a staff.
Yeah.
I know I'm just repeating what everybody's saying, but this will never continue to function without leadership.
All right. So you can have that governance body say, go get a CAD system. We think we need a statewide CAD system. So now you need somebody to write the RFP, to establish the requirements, write the RFP, issue the RFP, make an evaluation of the responses, and then bring. So the way it works for us, go issue the RFP. We go do that. We get the the responses and evaluate it, and then we meaning the staff, brings our recommendations back to the board. So we evaluated XYZ and this is what we found and we recommend you do this. They could say, no, let's do something else, but
Right.
but you have to have those, the experts on the ground to at least provide informed recommendations to the authoritative body.
Yeah, there's, Rick, are you able to bring this presentation up? I have to depart for another commitment. This is really, you know, I have this and next steps left, so I don't know if you necessarily need to present this, but at least to continue the conversation. There are additional key attributes and what the next steps might be.
Yeah, I'll pull it up. Let me see if I can get to it right away.
All right.
I'm not working off my normal computer here, so I have some challenges, but let me just see here.
Looks like Elizabeth has got it also. Elizabeth, you want to take over?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Sure.
I think, let me see, I might be in there. I just pulled it up. Let me just see if I'm in the right session.
No, it says
No, I'm
Elizabeth
not
is
in there.
here, but
If you
Rick's
send me a
not
link
here.
to that one, I can get in there, but you'll have to send me a link and I'll open it.
Yeah.
Now I'm in an old version. That one's just an old version.
No, it looks like Elizabeth has got it. So. Okay. There you go.
All right.
So yeah, I'm afraid I have to depart and touch base with everybody later. Thank you.
Thank you, Dom.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Dom.
Dominic.
All right, so here we are, key attributes. I think what other elements do we need here? I mean, obviously we have to have representation. I mean, so we have to, you know, part of this is to define a board, you know, executive board membership. I mean, our leadership. So I think, you know, we've got, obviously we have that leadership at the executive level. And I think, you know, we've got to, as part of our working group's task is if we're going to define this, we probably should do a first cut, in my opinion, first cut at membership at the executive level.
Did either of those models that we looked at, what do they have?
They didn't, well, yeah, they mentioned, go back to 20 or 21. So 20, this one talks about regional boards. They don't really, you know, I mean, they don't really talk about who the members are.
I was thinking more of Minnesota and North Dakota. Have they defined?
Yes, they have. So, Elizabeth, can you scroll up to
North Dakota definitely did.
yeah,
Okay.
right there, 14 is a good one. The next slide, yeah. So North Dakota had this list. And then of course we have the ECAC list.
Right.
Right. Okay, yep.
And, you know, I can go ahead and, you know, I can find, I certainly can go into the, if you go up to slide 12, please. So I can, you know, the membership of the statewide communication board, I can identify those. Go to slide 11, please.
While you're going there, Barb, what's the total size of your board?
We're just 9 members.
9, okay.
Yeah, and it limited really, well, first responders, so police, let's see, state, local, and county law enforcement, fire service, EMS, municipalities, and 3 members of the public.
Okay.
So there's not a lot of is like technology people, telecommunications people, And actually, there's not representation from the the communication centers directly, other than through the law, really through the law enforcement representatives, right? That operate those facilities. So I suppose technically there is.
Yeah, no, they're not listed here, but I can get that. I can get the list. I'll go on. I'll provide that list to everyone. But I think, I think, but basically, if we look at what the E911 board, the enhanced 911 board governance, the ECAC, some of these other state models, I think we could come up with a rational number of executive board members.
Right.
Right.
Sounds like
What
there's a
about
little,
regional boards? I mean, do we believe in the concept of a regional board? And if so, 2 regions, 4 regions? I mean, right now, we don't have, I mean, we have so many different regions based on different boards that are out there. I'm not sure what the best approach is, but there is benefit in fewer than more, because that's much more administration. I was thinking that maybe 2 boards, but I don't know if that gives us enough geographic.
Yeah. I don't think people will feel that sorry to interrupt, Rick, but I don't think
That's
people would
okay.
feel they would have a voice if they didn't have, like, if there were only 2 regional boards, right? If there were 6 regional locations. I think based on the discussion that we've been having and understanding the direction which we're going, I think if we were to change that from emergency services boards to committees and have them fall under the top level, right? Have those committees represent, so if there's 6 regions, then a committee for each region, so that we're not taking a bunch of people's time up to make statewide decisions, and that we utilize those committees to perhaps focus on what the regional needs are in conjunction with the top level board. That would be a thought that that would allow for people to have their voice, and it would allow for that primary governance committee to still make decisions. It's just a thought.
Yeah,
Again.
it's a good one.
And I was kind of picturing it as 4 or 5. At first I was thinking northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast. But then you have the Chittenden County piece, right? Which they are perhaps unique. Well, there's a lot of difference between the communities in the northwest corner, really, right? So you have the Burlingtons, but you also have very rural in the Franklin County area and that kind of thing. So I don't know if maybe it should be more than just 4. And then Central Vermont, of course, had its own entity going, so it might be good to include them.
And whenever the state tries to carve the state up into, whenever state government tries to carve the state up into regions, there's always a problem with the Barre Montpelier area, because we don't really fit in with Chittenden County. We don't really fit in with the Northeast Kingdom, and we don't really fit in with Southern Vermont.
Yeah, right. But I'm thinking right now of, like, there's particular concerns that have come to us from the Northeast Kingdom, especially around coverage. I'm thinking Michael Wright's conversations and experiences. And then you have the Southeast section, where many, or several anyway, of the responder agencies down there dispatch through New Hampshire. So that's kind of a unique a concern that they have. Southwest is really maybe where most of this conversation started, around the inequities of dispatch and especially following the consolidation and the elimination of Rutland.
Right.
So I don't know, maybe, but that still leaves the little orphan Central Vermont area.
Right.
So make it 5 or make it 6, make it Chittenden County, and then the rest of the Northwest, and the rest of the Northwest is represented separately. I don't know. Shall we
So
throw darts at the
Elizabeth, can you go
dartboard?
to slide 13, please? So in North Dakota, there were 4 regions, 4 committees, and of course there's a region, and this, there's kind of a natural dividing line in some ways. I mean, you've got, we obviously did it by county here, 53 counties, and so they, you look at, well, those folks interoperate with one another, except you always have challenges at your border. So, but the way it was designed here is kind of it's northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. But is there a rhyme or reason to this? Yes, I mean, except at the borders. But that doesn't take away from an individual county interacting with its. If you take the county that Bismarck is in, they obviously interact together as well because they have a lot of interoperability and into public safety responses between them. So it doesn't take away what has to still be done at local levels. That goes on, but I think this conversation is important because if you're going to create committees, regional committees, that selecting them based on something rational conversation like we're having makes sense.
How is it EMS divided up around the state? Does anybody know?
They have districts like a lot of just like AOT, like for example, Central Vermont is District 6.
Yeah.
And they have, I don't know what they have for structure within the district. Do they have a chair or I don't know what their structure is.
It just popped into my mind as another way to divvy things up.
Right, it's designated by the health department.
Yeah. And then we have, there's been conversation about divvying things up by the state police barracks or areas, I guess it was.
Yeah,
I don't think we should rely on that.
Yeah, I think we, as far as the number, MCPs, all of their scenarios landed on 6 centers, but I think that's mainly because that's what we currently have.
Right.
And I think they picked up on a lack of desire to go less than 6. But that doesn't necessarily mean that 6 is the magic number.
It doesn't. Yeah.
And I always have in the back of my head that no matter what we may do, the state police may ultimately do their own thing. They may ultimately say, we're just going to dispatch for our own people and the rest of you all fall into one of these 4 or 5 or 6 areas.
And that would be fine with me as long as they're playing by the same rules and meeting the minimum standards operationally and technically that whatever this entity is establishes.
Right.
Yeah, and I think as far as 6 being the magic number and the pushback about not wanting to go less, any pushback that came from me was more on from the perspective of I don't want to be told that because this study was not about the 911 system. So that was really where any pushback from me came on that. Is like, let's just focus on the problem we're trying to solve right now. The number of PSAPs can and has over the years fluctuated. We started at 10. So yeah.
Well, we had an interesting conversation with Vermont, who has only 1 PSAP. So
New Hampshire, you mean?
New Hampshire,
yeah.
I'm sorry, my bad. Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry about that. Yeah. I don't think we're going to reduce the number of PSAPs. I mean, well, that's obviously something that will come out of a regional group. Yeah, I don't see us going less, but that's obviously a conversation for a different working group.
Well, and I think it's outside the scope of this work,
Yeah, it is.
Just establish how the dispatch function is going to be arranged, and then the number of PSAPs can be discussed once there's a structure in place. Is kind of how I look at it. The board's always been not inclined to have more, but even having said that, when Chittenden County was going through all its work, there was a preliminary agreement that the board would consider making them a PSAP once they got their themselves established.
Sure.
And so if that had happened, we may have ended up with 7, right? Or another one may have, seats might have been shifted from one or more PSAPs into the Chittenden County entity. So those conversations can happen, but I don't think they should be the moves we take out of the gate. The dispatch structure is what's needs fixing right now.
Well,
Perhaps.
the bylaws could address that in the event that the number of PSAPs change in the future, we come back and revisit and update our model. So I think you have to leave flexibility in for changes for certain, certainly.
Yep.
I know it's probably outside of the scope of this working group, but we had met with the new town manager in Shelburne, and they had talked about perhaps no longer wanting to be a regional center. Did we ever have conversations with the other entities, the other, the Hartford and St. Albans?
I did not.
I don't think the task force as a whole has not, I don't believe.
Right.
Not that we want to build around those existing centers, but if it turned out that none of them or many of them no longer wanted to do, like Shelburne had expressed, it kind of gives a clean slate. It would make it maybe more palatable if we were talking about putting a center somewhere else.
We did talk to one director who said, I'll take it all on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. We are going to talk to Chris Bedotti. So he'll give us some insight. We'll raise some of that question with him, but we could also reach out and talk to, so we've spoken directly to, we did speak to the Hartford director when we met with Martha. So that's Scott, isn't it, Scott?
Yeah, Scott.
Scott was on the call. So yeah, we did talk to him. I may not have asked him a question directly about this, but we left open the door to follow up. Yes, the gentleman that we spoke with, the city manager, he was like, you could take it. We don't want to be a PSAP. He said, I can't gather enough money from my towns to pay for it. And so, yeah, he was pretty firm that if part of the decision was to reduce the number of PSAPs, he would raise his hand to be one of the first ones out.
Well, and I can tell you that right now, St. Albans is having a very difficult time with staffing, and they've had to actually cut back on some of the 911 call taking that they're doing on a temporary basis. And I asked directly if they intend to stop 911 call taking, and the answer to that was no. They do not intend to stop. They need to get their feet back under them. And so that's what's happening right now. But maybe that conversation does need to happen, because the MCP report did kind of make the assumption that everybody would buy into that.
Right.
So I think Hartford would. I've never heard Hartford express a desire to not do what they're doing and or expand what they're doing if they had the right resources and facilities and all of that. And same for Lamoille. I've not heard that from them.
No, yeah, I agree with what you said on those two.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's something maybe that, or the how we divide regions up might be something we need to continue to think about if we're going to have regional representation.
All right, so that's an action item for us to think about. We'll take it as an action item. And should we reach out to some of those other directors? To see maybe one of you want to be on the call, or I don't know how you want to handle that, but I did share with you so the police chief and the city director, we're not in agreement, but, yeah, the city manager was pretty firm that he didn't want to keep it.
And in that particular case, unfortunately, the police chief is now deceased, and there's an interim police chief in there
Oh,
who I've known forever. And actually, I am scheduling a meeting with him for early next week on another matter.
oh,
But I could toss out the idea that get his sense on what he thinks about continuing in that role, which could obviously be overruled by the town manager. But
Right.
I could have some initial conversation on that after we tend to our other business. So. And I'm happy to set up conversations with St. Albans as well. They are a little bit focused. They are a lot focused right now on solving their staffing problems. So I don't know what bandwidth they have right now, but I can ask.
Right.
okay. Yeah, that's an important one.
Okay. Are we comfortable enough with Hartford and Lamoille's positions on this that we don't need to have additional questions, or?
I'm comfortable with Lamoille, and I
Right.
think Hartford.
Okay.
I feel pretty comfortable, but I could reach out and ask. I mean, if you want, but I think they're firm. And we know Lamoille. We met with the sheriff months and months and months ago, but he said, yeah, we want to, he'll be happy to be the PSAP for everybody. It's pretty-
Right.
He should.
And
All right, okay,
I'm
sold.
yeah, he just happens to also be the 911 board chair.
Right,
Um,
right.
I'm comfortable with it today, but as I've said many times before, nothing against Roger or his department, but when you're dealing with the sheriff's department, you're always just one election away from everything falling apart.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whoever
And-
eventually he will retire, and whoever takes his place may or may not feel the same way.
Yeah, it's funny because every time you or Jen Morrison say that, I'll snap back with what I equally believe is you're one gubernatorial election away, or change even,
That's true.
and it
True.
still seems to fall to an individual, or an individual recommendation anyway, that might come out. So really, I guess what all that talk is there in all of this, the governance entity or whoever would make these decisions, there would have to be an agreed upon I'm backing out plan,
Right.
and
Yeah.
how you go about doing that. It cannot be a unilateral decision that you just spring on the authority without proper notice and very good planning. So.
Right. But
Well,
and I agree with you, Barb, that the same thing what I just said about the sheriff's office, the same thing could happen in a municipality or the state.
Yeah.
But with a municipality and a state, they have an underlying, they're an entity, they are a municipal government or a state government with structure, whereas a sheriff's department is a unique animal in Vermont. They have no county structure to back them up.
Right. Yep. I'll give you that.
Right.
That's correct.
So I just wanted to bring attention to that we're 9 minutes away, and Kim Cheney has joined it, and so I don't know. We need to
Sure.
work towards bringing closure and have a public comment. But
Yeah. Let's
I think we're probably there. We obviously if we go, Elizabeth, can you go down to the closeout slide down there?
I think
Yeah, that's not it, but that's something we need to do. Yeah, we'll go to the agenda page. That'll get us to the agenda page. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we've got just about enough time left to firm up our next meeting and take public comment.
right.
Right.
Yep.
So next steps, I mean, we have several things that we're thinking about here. I'm contacting a couple people for discussions. I think as far as, is there anything else we need to identify right now as a next step? Other than scheduling the next meeting?
let's get some further consideration of the regionalization approach that we've been talking about. I think we could start there next time.
Okay. As for next meeting, next week on Wednesday, we have a regular task force meeting. What does the rest of everyone's Wednesday look like?
Well, let me take a look.
You mean to meet after the regular task force?
We could.
I'm wide open Wednesday, the 27th.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good up until 2.
Okay.
And then I'm free at 2:30. So whatever works.
Why don't we, so the regular task force meeting might be a little bit longer this time because we're going to be hearing recommendations from, I think, tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 working groups. So if we scheduled our meeting for 12:30, they might run right into each other. How about 12:45 to 2?
That works for me.
Okay.
And that way we'll at least have a scheduled break, if the regular meeting goes its full amount. Elizabeth, does that work? I suppose I
Works
should
for
ask
me.
if Televate can be there.
Yeah, it works for us.
Okay, 12:45 to
Let me check.
2.
Let me
On
check
the-
Dom's schedule. But I think so.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. And if there's nothing else on the next meeting, I will open this up to public comment. And Kim Cheney, thanks for joining us. Do you have anything you'd like to share today?
Well, a couple of things. What's totally missing from every slide is how they get their money. And without knowing that, you can't even begin to guess how it functions. And because fighting, if there's local effort, you need to know that, or at least plan around it. And my other thought is there's a whole nother group doing the exact same thing that you're doing. This is just like the schools. Everybody used to have their own little bailiwick and they decided it was inefficient and too expensive. So now they want to consolidate management and so forth. I think it would be really worthwhile for Rick or Dom to get an ear in on what they're thinking about, because it's an overlap. It's not really terribly different from what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be, we can all be in our little places and our little silos, but there is a big picture out here. What's the economic sense of the state, at least with education, which costs more than you folks are going to spend? They're wanting to consolidate. And the management of any kind of consolidated financial is it's going to be a different story. That's what I see anyhow.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'll need to mull that over. I hadn't brought the school districting or redistricting into my thoughts, so I'll look into that a little bit and see where they're at. But I appreciate your comments today and thanks for being here. Is there anything else from anyone? All right. How about a motion to adjourn?
I'll move we adjourn.
Waiting for Mike.
Sorry, second. I was
Thank
on
you.
mute and didn't realize I was on mute.
Thank you, Mike. I suppose I could second it. So,
Yeah.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor of adjourning, raise your hand or indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Okay. We will talk to everybody next week. Thank you very much for all your efforts today. Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Have a good
Thanks,
one.
Paul. Mike.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Hey Siri, call Lindsey Johnson.
Calling Lindsey Johnson.
Dear, dear.
Hey, how are you? Okay, so pick. When was the last time you did this? When was the last time you were in Quicken?
The last time I backed it up.
I don't know. I'm going to ask a very specific question. I want a very specific answer. When was the last time you used Quicken on your computer? A week ago, 2 weeks ago, a month ago?
Probably sometime in July.
July, great. Okay, I can work with July. So this has a transaction in it from July 22nd for LJ Group. KeyBank Checking has transactions in it. Looks like you don't use this very often.
I do, but a lot of those I have to fill in directly because they don't come from them.
Okay, so when you worked on it the last time? What was the last account you worked on?
Oh God.
Because I don't have anything like in Citizens Joint Checking since December, it looks like.
In which one?
Citizens Joint.
Well, no, that's not right because I have reconciled it all through, hang on, let me tell you, at least through June.
At least through June. Okay.
Well, hang on, let me just.
Because this is the most recent file on your computer.
Right, and so that's what I was saying is that the most recent one where the computer said back it up on an outside drive is the one I have in my hand.
Okay. Which was when, though?
That was probably the July one.
Okay, good. Go ahead and plug it in. I think you're going to find these are identical files, but that's quite all right.
Wait, sorry, that goes on this side of this computer.
So I've got one from June.
Hang on. Okay.
Yep, it's July 10th. Okay. So I'm going to open this file right from the drive. I'm just going to throw it on the desktop for now. QData 22, we're going to call it, just in case restore. There we go. No, this is from July 10th. So Citizens Joint Checking is identical. You have not reconciled it through June.
No, that's the end of the go back up on Quicken.
Yeah.
So see, this is the end of the keep going up. There it is. See?
Oh, you just got some stuff that's like pre-advanced.
There's some
Okay.
stuff that happens all the time that I
Okay.
put in at the beginning.
So,
of the
all
year.
right. So let me close this. I'm going to close that. We're going to go back to this one. Yeah, these are identical. The balances are identical. This is okay. This is the right one. So if we scroll up, there you go, through to August even. Good to go. Does that look
Yeah,
right?
no, it only shows where it's reconciled when it has an R. So there you go. See, there starts the, 416. So I must not have gotten to that one all the way through June.
Well, let me double check because I've got two files. So I'm just going back and forth to check. Yeah. Okay. So good. They're the same. All right. So your backup, we're going to leave the backup. We're going to delete that data. We're going to reopen this one. And you just had the wrong version of Quicken installed. You must have reinstalled the old one, which is totally fine. So now you got the new one.
So now can we get rid of all those other
Yes.
data on there so we don't end up with?
Yep.
Because there was a lot of them when I tried to figure out what the hell I was doing. I think it was under backup. There was like 50.
Yeah.
Backup was on.
Holy crap. There's so much stuff in this folder. This Huntington Quicken, you don't use that, right? Yeah, you haven't used it since 2011. So,
Okay.
all right. And then I have to run right after I do this. Sorry. Where are you? You home?
Yeah. So what are you in right now?
I'm just in your folders.
Oh. I don't reckon some of those.
So anything in that Quicken old BU folder or Quicken.bad. You don't need to use those, and everything else should be good to go. And then I'm going to change this back because there you
Yeah,
go.
because the greens are so small that in that small
Yes,
font, I can't read anything.
that's why I have glasses.
I have glasses too, dude. I've been wearing my whole life.